Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bowmaths. Today we're going to be talking about money. And it's just going to be a cute little application of some of the fraction stuff we've been doing and a little bit of review. But we're going to be talking about fractions basically from the perspective of money, and it'll maybe just, give you another way of thinking about money that you haven't done it before. So on the left-hand side, we have my life savings, and on the right-hand side, we have how much money I make from Bowmaths. So for my non-Canadian viewers, we're going to be using Canadian currency here. So these toonies, those are worth $2. I don't know how to spell toonie. Toonies are worth $2. Loonies are worth $1. Quarters are worth 25 cents. Dimes are worth 10 cents. And lastly, nickels are worth 5 cents. Alright, so you're probably pretty familiar with this. And usually the way we think about these coins is by using decimals, right? So this is 2, this is 1. But 25 cents, that's the same as $0.25, basically, right? Or a dime, we need 10 dimes in order to make a dollar. So a dime is worth $0.1. And a nickel is worth 5 cents. So that's $0.05. So we're all familiar with these decimal values of coins, but maybe one thing that we don't think of as often is, hey, these are actually decimals, right? We can express them as fractions. So let's try and express them as a fraction right now. So 0.25, just as some review, how do we put that into a fraction form? Well, we start by writing 25, and then we divide by 100, right? Because this decimal was slid over twice. So 25 over 100, but this can be simplified. Both 25 and 100 are divisible by 25. So if we simplify this down to an equivalent fraction, we get 1 over 4, or a quarter. Oh, that's actually why it's called a quarter, right? I'm sure a lot of you already knew that, but in case you didn't, that's why. For a dime, well, a dime we're doing 1 over, and then we've moved the decimal over just by 1, so it's going to be 1 over 10, which is going to be the same thing as, well, that's already simplified actually, right? Because 1 and 10 are co-prime with each other. So this is the fraction that represents a dime. And then for a nickel, well, we have 5 here, right? We're just writing the number. And then how many times was the decimal slid over? By 2. So we need to divide by 100. So we have 5 over 100. These are both divisible by 5. So dividing by 5 each, we get the equivalent fraction of 1 over 20. So this is what we're going to be focusing on for the rest of the video. We're going to think of quarters as 1 over 4. We're going to think of dimes as 1 over 10. And we're going to think of nickels as 1 over 20. And we're just going to do a little bit of math with that. All right, so let's say I take some quarters. All right, so I'm going to lay out 7 quarters like this. Well, it's already in the name, right? There are 7 pieces of coin here, and they are worth a quarter each. So this is 7/4, or 7 quarters. So that is kind of an improper fraction that would represent how many pieces of size a quarter that we actually have here. Okay, we could also do this with dimes, right? I could do 1, 2, 3, 4. So here I've got 9 dimes, so this would be 9 out of 10, right? Because each of these dimes are worth a tenth, right? And we have 9 of them, so that's how we would write that, right? And we could also do maybe some nickels here. So here I have 3 nickels, and each of these nickels are worth a 20th. So 3 is my numerator, that's how many I have. And 20 is my denominator, because that's basically the size that this currency is worth, right? So we see that we can use improper fractions, or just regular fractions as well, to basically denote how much money that we have here, right? Or how many of each of these pieces we have. So then what we could do is, well, naturally, let's try and add them to figure out how much money I have right here. So let's do that. We have 7/4 plus 9/10 plus 3 over 20. Okay, so we need to make a common denominator. 4 and 10 are both factors of 20, so 20 will be our lowest common multiple of these 3 numbers, and so that means it's going to be our denominator. So to make 7/4 into a fraction out of 20, we got to multiply them both by 5. And to make 9/10 a fraction out of 20, we got to multiply them both by 2, right? 4 times 5 is 20, 10 times 2 is 20. So this will then give us 7 times 5 is 35 over 20. 9 times 2 is 18 over 20. And 3 over 20 is just normal because we were already out of our common denominator, right? Okay, so adding these up, we get 35 plus 18, that is going to be 53, plus another 3, that's 56. So we get 56 out of 20, which we can then simplify down. We can then simplify this down to 14 over 5 if we divide them both by 4 each. So that is going to be basically a fraction that represents how much coinage we have here. That's not necessarily super meaningful for us. So one way we saw to make improper fractions more meaningful was converting them into mixed numbers, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So maybe just right over here. 14 fifths. To convert that into a mixed number, let's divide it by 5. 4. So this is going to be the same thing as 2, right? That's our quotient, and 4 fifths. Okay, so that's maybe a little more clear as to what's going on. So we have $2, right? A whole number's worth $1 here, right? $1 was a loonie. So we have $2 and then 4 fifths of $1, right? So once again, this is a recurring theme that we see where improper fractions are good to express how much of a certain quantity we have, right? So we have 7 of a quantity of size 1/4. But then mixed numbers, they make a little more sense in terms of how we actually interpret our result, right? It's a little more obvious from 2 and 4 fifths that we have $2 and 4 fifths of $1 rather than 14 fifths. It doesn't tell us a lot about what we have. And then we can go ahead and convert this 4 fifths into a decimal, right? 4 fifths, if you remember the mental math trick video, that's just going to be 0.8, right? I multiply the 4 by 2 and then slide the decimal over. So this is just going to be 2.8 or $2.80 is how much money we have present right there. All right, let's just do one more example for the road. So we have these two quantities of money. So let's say you earned, so let's say you earned this amount, which looks like it is $3. And then here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dimes. So the dimes, they're worth a tenth, right? So it's out of 10 is our denominator, and we have 8 of them, right? So that's our numerator. So we can express this as a improper fraction. And 8 tenths can be simplified, right? So this can be also written as 3 and 4 fifths. All right, and then looking over here, let's say your friend has $1.75, right? Written as a fraction though, the dollar is the 1, that's the whole number piece. And then these, well, each of these pieces are worth a quarter, so our denominator is out of 4, and we have 3 of them, right? So this is 1 3/4 of $1. So now let's say you and your friend want to pool together your money. You don't mind putting a little bit more money in than your friend is. So if we add these up, we're looking at 3 4 fifths plus 1 3/4. So now this is just an adding a mixed number problem, right? So we can convert these into improper fractions. So to do that, we do 3 times 5, which is 15 plus 4, which is going to give us 19. So we have 19 over 5. And then over here, we have 1 times 4, which is 4, plus 3, which is 7. So 1 3/4 is the same as the improper fraction of 7/4. So now we need to make a common denominator in order to add these, right? Because right now these aren't the same size of piece, right? So a common denominator, the lowest common multiple of 5 and 4 is going to be 20. So we're going to multiply 19 fifths by 4 in the numerator and denominator. And to get 4 to a 20, we have to multiply by 5. So we will be doing that to get an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 20. Okay, so 19 times 4, that will be 76 over 20. And 7 times 5, that's in our times tables, that's 35 over 20. Okay, so adding these up, we get 111 out of 20. But once again, that's not a super useful decimal. Well, we know pieces of a 20th is worth a nickel, right? There's 20 nickels in a dollar. So this is equivalent to saying we have 111 nickels. But again, that's not super useful. So let's convert this back into a mixed number to interpret our result a little better. So we got 20 right here. All right, how many times does 20 go into 1? It doesn't. How about 11? Once again, it's too big. So we have to look at 111. Well, 20 times 5 is 100. So we know that it'll go in 5 times here, right? Because if we went another, we'd get to 120. That's too big. So it goes in 100 times. 111 minus 100 is 11. So this is going to be equivalent then to the quotient, which is 5, and then 11 over 20. So this is the same thing as $5 and 11/20. All right, and then if we wanted, we could also convert this into a decimal. So we got to convert 11/20 into a decimal. So just doing the long division here. We get 55 cents is the 11/20. So that means we have $5.55, or $5.55. So while I'll admit that decimals are more useful for looking at money, this is just kind of a useful little exercise for us to practice some things that we've seen with fractions. And hey, now you can be a little more diverse with the math that you use in your everyday life. So I hope you found this useful and a little bit interesting. And at the very least, I hope you got a little bit more fraction practice. But until the next video, you have a good one, you stay groovy, and I'll see you then.